Noon. I have no idea where in the world you are at, but I am just so thankful and honored that you have showed up with us today. Today is going to be one of those shows that I don't know if you're going to take a lot of notes in this show, but I can promise you, Stacia and I will be back to do another show no matter what, anyways. Either I'll be on her, she'll be on mine. We'll be doing some stuff together. And it's just going to be super fun. But today you're going to hear one of those stories that you're going to be captivated by, that you're going to be going, no, that didn't really happen. Or you're going to go, oh, that happened. That's so cool. Or you're just going to learn about what it means to live boldly with purpose. Because I can promise you that Stacia has done that. She has dedicated her life to living boldly, to the things that she's done. I've had several conversations with her now, and every single one of them I leave thinking of, how do I get a hold of her again? How do I get to talk to her again? How do I get to spend time? And so today, oh man, I'm just super excited to hear it, to listen, to be a fly on the wall, if that's what I get to be during this time that we get to share together. Because when we think about living boldly with purpose, you know, a lot of folks would say, well, what is it that you do? What is it that you've been, you know, able to do? Or how did you get to know what your calling was? And some folks, you know, stay, you know, especially in our community where mom or dad or aunt or uncle said, this is what you're going to do when you grow up, and you go up and do it. And, you know, had my mom told me I was going to be an accountant, I probably would have done it and been a terrible accountant for about 6 minutes. And then as soon as I messed up somebody's books and they had no more money left, I wouldn't have been an accountant no more. But some people figure that out somehow, some way. I don't have to worry about that today because I get to do it every single day. You know, I wake up every morning and I say, you know, I make meaningful connections every day. And today is one of those. And so, Stacia, thank you for being on today. Thank you for taking your time out of your day. I'm so honored and blessed and just excited that I get to hear from you one more time. And so I'm going to give you the floor. I don't want to take a whole bunch of more time, just me talking, because today's show is about you. So it's all you, and then we'll chop it up with whatever after we hear your story. And you can start wherever you want in your life. I tell people don't make it up because your family will know and they'll come after you. You
They
I won't know because I didn't grow up with you, but somehow they come after you and they come get you. So not that you would because you don't have anything to make up anyways. But just have
Well,
some
I
fun
think my
today.
story is interesting enough, right? That
Yes.
I won't have to make anything up. Some of it, I wish it had been made up.
Oh, gotcha. Well, cool. Well, it's all yours. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about who Miss Crawford is.
Wow. Well, it was funny that when you were saying that, you were saying that your parents were telling you that, were going to be an accountant. And growing up, I thought I was going to be a doctor, or I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And that was only because growing up, I was always the standout student, always, straight A's, teacher's pet, as we used to call it back then, rule follower, all of that, president of the student council. And so people would always say, oh my gosh, you're so smart. You're so smart. You could be a doctor. You could be a doctor. And so it was planted in my head that I'm going to be a doctor because there's this concept of, and I'm sure you probably heard it.
Mhm.
A child can't be what they don't see. And so they're not knowing that there's all these different careers and opportunities out there. So I grew up thinking that I wanted to be a doctor. Well, I got to college and discovered that while I did very well in math and science, and I love that stuff, but I really tapped into my creative side. And that's when I actually determined that I really like to write. Writing was kind of my thing. And so I changed not to mention my freshman year when I remember I had my first, I want to say it was a chemistry test, and I got a C on my chemistry test. And I was absolutely devastated. And I
Wow.
ran back to my dorm and I called my sister. And I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I'm stupid. I'm not as smart as I thought I was. I got a C. And she was like, girl, what are you talking about? You got a C. I'm like, I've never seen a C next to my name before. I was just totally broken up. And she explained to me, she was like, look, you're
Oh
at
my
an
gosh.
university, right? And at an Ivy League university, you're not the only one who was at the top of your class. Everybody was at the top of their class. So you got a little bit more competition. So when they're grading on the curve, what might have been an A is, that's average there. And I was like, okay. But I realized then too that I thought that I wanted to, be something that had to do with writing and using words. And I was falling in love with poetry. And this was also back in the time when Oprah had just gotten her first national broadcast. And I was
Okay.
familiar with Oprah because I was from Baltimore and Oprah was
Mhm.
on TV in my city. So I would see her every day. So now having her seeing this national platform, I was like, many other Black girls, I want to be Oprah one day.
So
And
she started out. So she started out just in the Baltimore market, not in
she
national
started out
markets.
in a small, I think she might have been like Arkansas, one of the smaller markets, and she
Oh,
eventually
okay.
ended up in Baltimore. And she was on a daytime show there. And so I got to
Hmm.
see her every day and, being able, and back then, how it was, you didn't see a whole lot of people that looked like
Of
us,
course,
right? So
absolutely.
being able to see a Black woman in this position on TV every day. And so that was kind of like partly what I was aspiring to do. And so I decided I was going to study journalism. And so I was at Penn and I was studying communications and doing all my journalism classes. And I got an internship my junior year. And that was really kind of like the changing point for me because while I was thinking I wanted to be on camera and be a reporter, because this is what you see every day. When I got
Mhm.
my internship, and I remember they're giving you the tour, telling you, who's who and what's what. And there was a woman that would come in, and when she came in, I mean, she just commanded so much attention, and you could tell she was very well respected. And I looked at her, and she was a Black woman. And I looked and I was like, who is that? And they
Mhm.
said to me, they said, oh, that's Ray. She's the producer. And that's when it clicked for me. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a reporter. I want to be a producer.
Oh
And from
yeah.
that day on, that just changed everything for me. They were like, yeah, she's the one who has the final say and she makes the decisions about what stories the reporters cover and, what goes where in the show and all that stuff. And I was like, yes, that is what I want. I actually want to be in a position where I have some decision making power. And so that was how my journey to being a producer began. And so I did an internship there. This was at Channel 10 in Philadelphia. And after completing my internship that summer, they actually hired me. So I actually got my first job in television when I was still in college. And and you can
Oh
imagine,
wow. Okay.
yeah, it was pretty intense, studying full time and now working at the station.
Mhm.
And I was able to juggle it. And I worked there until I graduated. And then I ended up getting a job back in Baltimore, which was my home city, and worked there for about a year and a half. And then, moved up the ranks. I moved on and worked in New Haven, Connecticut. And ended up during that time, actually, my grandmother became very ill. And my grandmother
Okay.
had raised me because my parents died when I was young. And she was diagnosed with cancer. And so I left my job in New Haven to go back to Baltimore to help take care of my grandmother. And yeah, that was a very, very challenging time. But it was funny when I went back to Baltimore because I went back without a job. I was just like,
Oh, wow.
I have to go take care of my grandma. That was priority number one. And one day I went to the former station that I had worked at, and I'm in the newsroom, and several people that I had, my former colleagues were there, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, Stacy is here! Stacy is here!" And everybody's all excited to see me. And the news director comes out, and he's like, "What is all this commotion? What is going on?" And they were like, "Oh, Stacy is here!" And then he's like, "Who is this Stacy, a woman that everybody's all excited about?" And they're like, "Oh, she used to be a producer here, and we all love her, and she was great, and she did this." And he literally called me into his office. We
Mhm.
talked for, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes, and he offered me a job. And I was like,
Really? Oh gosh.
offered me a job. He was like, yeah, everybody says you're the best and you did this. I'm like, there was no resume, there was no tape, I had nothing. He's just like, everybody in this newsroom is vouching for you. And
So you're in.
And he was like, the job is yours if you want it. So
Wow.
I ended
That's
up
so
going
cool.
back to work for my old station. And yeah, that was an amazing time. And during my tenure there, I don't know if you remember, but there was a time back when Saturday mornings was all Saturday morning cartoons. There was no
Yes.
news on the weekend mornings.
No, there was cartoons like it should
That's
have been, right? When
It
you're a
was all
kid.
cartoons. Well, I
Yes.
actually created the first morning television show.
Really?
Yes, a
Okay.
weekend television show. I did that when I was working in Baltimore during my tenure there. And Chicago had seen it, and they came calling. They were like, "Hey, we saw what you did in Baltimore, and the show is doing great," because everybody said it would never work. And as you can see, right now it's working
Now you
gangbusters.
can't find cartoons. It's
You
all
can't.
your fault.
It's all news. Everything is news now, right? You're welcome.
I love it.
And so, yeah, Chicago came calling. And so I packed up my bags and I moved to Chicago and started a weekend morning show in Chicago. And it was very successful. And so I worked at the ABC station there.
Okay.
And about 20 years in, I was 3 months shy of my 20-year anniversary. And we got a new general manager. And he came in, and you know how it is when you get a new GM,
Mhm.
leadership changes and everybody wants to make things better and they're trying new things. Well, he got the bright idea to cancel the midday show, which I was producing at that time, the highest rated news show in the market. And he thought, they were going to do something different. So just like that, I was out of a job. And at that time, I basically had a decision to make. It was like, okay,
Mhm.
I could stay at the station and do something else, or I could bet on me. And so I decided I was going to bet on me. And I took
Mhm.
my, 30 years of television experience and I started Stay Ready Media. And
Okay.
so that's how Stay Ready Media was born back in 2013.
All right.
So that's what I'm still doing to this day.
Well, the 2013. There's still 13 more years to go of you just doing
Yes.
so something. I mean, so maybe tell us a little bit about State Ready Media and
Yeah.
what it does, and
We've done a
you know.
lot. So when I started, my whole concept was I was like, I know I have all of this TV insight. I've got this expertise, and I didn't really know what to do with it.
Mhm.
And I got a download, that basically was saying that you were doing all this to get people on your show. But now, not being attached to a show, you can help people get on any show. And
That's
that was
true, huh?
really kind of the premise of, the work that I do today. It's helping people to really understand the power of their own stories. Because as a producer, I would have so many people who were pitching me, trying to get on my show. And many of the pitches were just bad. I mean, even some of the ones that came from professional PR firms, like high level firms, were just writing terrible pitches. And so I would have to spend a lot of time trying to create a newsworthy story out of what they were sending me.
Mhm.
And, I'm like, this is really not my job. As a professional PR person, you should know what I want, what I need, and how to present it in a compelling package that makes it a great story for my show.
Yeah.
And then that's when it clicked. I was like, that is what you need to do. You need to tell people how they can do it. PR firms charge a lot, as you know. I mean, now many of the, good ones, you're going to pay upwards of $10,000 a month. And many people, especially, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, small businesses may not have that kind of budget. So I made it my mission to give them access to that without having to pay those high, monthly retainers. And so we've been doing that for 13 years and it's still going strong. So basically, our main pillars are helping people to not only get booked on television, because while that's not an easy part, it's probably one of the easiest parts of the process.
Mhm.
But what we really focus on is that authority building and using media as a vehicle to other avenues. Meaning, because I would talk to people and sometimes they would say, well, I've been on TV and it didn't do anything for me. I was actually just this morning on a live stream with one of, a business coach who I admire deeply. And one of the things that she said, yeah, I hired a PR firm and I was paying them upwards of $7,000 a month. And, they got me on a few things here and there, but I didn't make any money from it. And
Wow.
I immediately thought, wow. I'm like, because the
Yeah.
purpose is not to get the media. The purpose is to get the media so that it can do something for you. And
Mhm.
ultimately, that something is to grow your business. Like if you're
Yeah.
not making money from the media appearance, then what's the point, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a vanity metric. It really should be an asset for your business. And so that is one of our pillars in our business to make sure that people are not just being on TV for the sake of saying, "Hey, I was on TV." But actually being able to say, hey, I was on TV and this is how it helped me to grow my business. This is how much money I got from it. Here's the speaking engagements. Here's the book deal. Here's the movie deal,
Mhm.
right? All of those types of things. So that's really an important part of the function of media. It's that authority building. It's giving you that name recognition. A
Mhm.
lot of my clients do a lot of speaking, right? So if you're doing a speaking engagement, and you're filling out applications, what is really going to differentiate you from the tens of thousands of other people who are also filling out applications? So, I believe that when your name is in the headlines, when they're familiar, when they open up that application and they already know who you are because they've seen you on TV, they've read about you in magazines, they've seen you on podcasts. That is the thing that really helps to differentiate you when you're growing a business.
Okay. That makes sense. That really makes sense. For you and your, the span of the career and all the years you spent, and what when I think about identity, and who we are as little kids, and one of the things that you alluded to was having, looking at somebody that looked like you to know that you could do it. I just recently, the reason I started this podcast is because I was at this event where there was 500 people in the room, and this is like 5 years ago, 4 years ago now. Yeah, yeah, 2022. So I'm at this event, and there's 500 people in the room, and I count there's 30 people of color in the room, and I go, and this is a great event, and it's all about trust and leadership and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, why is there only 30? And I've since had the guy, David Horsager on my show, and it's just he's like, I'm just doing, I'm just inviting people, and whoever shows up, shows up. But to me, it meant a whole lot, and I come back and I start as well. I need to talk to folks of color and get them on my podcast so we can learn about this trust thing and all this
Mhm.
stuff. And what I realized is I said it didn't matter. I would tell, oh, it doesn't matter. I can do anything I want to do. My mom's said I could be the president of the United States. I since found out I can't be the president of the United States. I can't be an accountant. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I can't be. But what I realized is I'm counting. So if I'm counting how
Mhm.
many people are in the room, that means it matters to me. And that was a whole shift in my thinking. And when I approach things and go, wait a minute, it does matter because that's part of my identity and who I am. And I'm not the only person who counts either, because when lots of us are in rooms with it's only, we're
Do it.
yeah. And so maybe kind of walk me through your identity journey, because when I think of producer, what I thought about a producer was until you just told me like I want to be a producer. I'm like, you have to have a lot of money because you're the one who has to pay for the show, and so
Oh,
that's what I'm thinking about now. I'm realizing that I got my degree in communications and broadcast communications, so I realized a little bit later, but that was my thought process. And then you were able to get into rooms that a whole lot of other people never could even pierce or get close to.
that's
And
right.
that had to do a lot with your identity. So I'd love to you to kind of walk us through that journey.
Yeah, I mean, and that has been an interesting journey because even being in this space, it's like people, television, we look at TV as this pinnacle. It's like, ooh, TV. Even when I would tell people what I do, oh, I'm a TV producer. And it's like their eyes light up, like, oh, that must be interesting. Tell me about that.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever met a celebrity? And I'm like, I could tell
Of
you
course.
all day long, all the celebrities, that I've met. But part of that, comes from my identity. And my sister was a big part of that because when I first moved to Chicago, and she would always say, you don't recognize, the value of what you bring to the table. And I was always like, well, I'm just Stacia. I'm just little old me. She's like, no, you really are something special. You're giving people access
Mhm.
that they would not normally have. That, there's a level of power to that. And so I think, that identity, and and it constantly changes. And I think with you saying that, how we go into the rooms and we're counting, I think I would do that too. And I still do, certain rooms I would go into. And yeah, I'm counting to see how many other people are there that look like me. And I think that comes from us not truly fully understanding and believing that we belong there.
Yes.
Oftentimes, if we are there, it's because we feel like, oh, well, I just got lucky,
Mhm.
right? It's like we don't recognize the true value that we bring to the table. That's a game changer. And so when you really own that and step into that, it's a life changer, is what it is.
When I think about, something like trust, I just brought up the trust thing. You're in an industry where it's hard to trust no matter who you are because everybody's trying to. I'm not saying my perception is that a lot of folks are trying to do whatever they can to get to the top and willing to step on people to get there. And now, so you have to trust the rooms you're in, trust the people, and you don't know if they have your best interest at heart. How have you been able to, through your life, I guess, approach that trust? Like, do you just don't trust anybody until they prove they can be trustworthy? Do you give them the benefit of the doubt first, and then when they mess up, you don't do it again? Uh, yeah, how does that work with
Well,
you?
I think a lot of that, it comes from relationships, right? Taking the time to actually get to know people and understanding people. And being in media, it was like when you talked about trust and authority, there was no greater trust and authority than, television, right? When you turn on the news and you see those people, you trust them. There is some level of that is changing now, right? Because we're seeing, the changes in and how the
Algorithm.
political landscape is, creeping into that, which is why journalism is so important.
Hmm.
And independent journalism is important as well. But we're seeing, a lot of biases come out where, the whole thing about journalism was it was, objective. You're just presenting facts, no opinions, right? It is what it is. And we've seen that change. But I think that, even when you're in rooms now, that trust, I just think that for the most part, we as humans, we have to be a little bit more skeptical, especially in this age now where we have, all the technology and the AI. You don't know what to trust,
Yeah,
right?
no.
You see pictures and videos, and there used to be a day where, we would say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if I saw a picture of it or if I saw a video of it, it had to have happened. And now with, all of the technology, you have to question everything. And I just think that it's just a matter of doing your due diligence, using some common sense, doing some research when necessary, and making decisions after you've done that.
Yeah, I hear now that, well, a lot of folks say trust but verify.
Absolutely.
You do that, you
Absolutely.
go verify, and now it's like you said, it's getting harder and harder to verify because because of these algorithms, because we get so piecemealed in some of the information we get, we may never even hear about something that was actually true. We might go down this road that was just somebody's opinion that got you down these roads, and you just go, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
how did I get to this point? Which to me kind of brings up a relationship. When I think about the relationships in my life and the people that have been those influences and how important relationships are, and they say the five people that you hang around with are the five people that are probably most like you or that
Mhm.
within a certain income range of where you're at. How have you approached relationships over the years? Because I can imagine that some of those relationships, especially if I say it's a celebrity, that's got to be hush hush or whatever because how much people are trying to get with them, so you can't just have your cell phone out with their number or whatever on it. But how have you cultivated and cherished your relationships through your life?
Yeah, I think relationships are very important, and particularly being in this space of media and PR. because it is a relationship business, right? I mean, I need to be able, even when I'm working with my clients, to pick up a phone and, call a journalist and say, hey, I've got a great story for you. And them, by us having that relationship and then them seeing my work and knowing that I'm not going to bring them anything that is not a bona fide
Mhm.
opportunity, that's going to bring value to their audience. So that relationship is key. PR is always has been and always will be a relationship based business. And so, even when you work with PR agents who will say, oh, well, you just got to send out more pitches, you just got to blast them out to any and everybody. And especially now with the technology where that it's an easier thing to do. But that actually corrodes trust, right? When you're sending pitches to a journalist that's not even in, your client's atmosphere, in their ecosystem or in their niche, you erode that trust every time you do that. And then it gets to the point where eventually they don't want to hear from you at all because
Mhm.
now, they're looking at it like, oh my gosh, he's just, sending me some more crap. So the trust has to be number one. That absolutely is the top.
So, 13 years ago, 2013, you went on your own. And I'm sure you brought some of those key relationships with you. But then I'm sure you had to cultivate many, many more. Was it any different now that you're not the label of ABC or the label of, to cultivate some of those relationships, or
You
what's
know,
that?
yeah, that's a good question. And you know what? And it wasn't just other people who were seeing that. I saw it too, because even when, like when I was a producer and I could easily call somebody and say, hey, this is Stacia Crawford from ABC. Now they're listening, right? This is
Hmm.
Stacia from CBS. You get their attention right away. And it's like, now that I don't have that, again, going back to identity, right? I'm going through this identity crisis of who am I without that label, right? Now, it was easy for me to get into rooms, to call people to get access when I had, that moniker behind my name. And I kind of struggle with that a little bit, like, well, who wants to hear from me now? Who am I now? I don't have, ABC behind me. And so it took some time for me to really kind of do some soul searching and recognize that I'm valuable without that. I was valuable before ABC and I will be valuable after ABC. But that takes some work.
Love that. Yes. Well, that's so cool. One of the things that seems to be super important in our lives is personal development and our ability to grow. And I know you talked about having that A or getting that C, and then I was thinking like that's all I got, so that's the only letter I knew. So, but but you go through the that whatever belief that hey, you're super smart, everything comes easy, all of this is I don't really have to work very hard. Maybe I don't know. You probably were working hard, but it didn't. For other people watching, it probably didn't seem like it was hard for you to do. And now you're in business. You got to work on you at some point so that you can be better for other people. How important is personal development, and what are some of the things that you've done to improve you and your lifestyle and all those things?
Oh yeah. So oh my gosh, you just said a mouthful because it was. So I stepped out on faith into onto this entrepreneurial pathway thinking I have everything that I need to start a great
Mhm.
business. It's like, yeah, okay. But as I'm going about this, I'm like, well, you know what? I understand media. I'm like, you can't tell me nothing about media. I've been in this game too long. I know that. But I also had to learn media and business are two different things. I've realized I don't really know much about running a business, right? Now, I had businesses in the past. I mean, I've had a retail store, I had a fashion line, I had a bath and body products line, I ran a cultural center. I, oh yeah, I think entrepreneurship is just in my blood.
Mhm.
But but even when I was doing those things, I also had a job. So I was not relying on those to
Mhm.
survive and to eat and to keep a roof over my head.
Yeah.
So when it got to this point where This is your main source of livelihood. You got to make this thing work. And so you have to be willing to step out of your own way and be willing to try things. One of the things that I had to let go of was perfectionism. I was always, one of these people who's like, oh, I'll do it, but it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. But when you're, on this journey as an entrepreneur, if you wait for it to be perfect, you'll be long out of business before, right? You've got to ideate, you've got to put it out there, you've got to refine it, you've got to revise it, try it again. And all of that takes time, effort, it takes courage. In some cases, it takes money. And one of the things that I did, you were asking what did I do,
Mhm.
in the reign of personal development was I actually had to hire a business coach.
Okay.
And that was big for me. My first business coach, who actually I hired in 2014, and I was just on a call with her on Sunday. We still, keep in touch. We're great friends. And when I first got into that environment, it was a game changer for me too, because you're in this place where it's like you don't know what you don't know.
Oh my God. Yes.
Right. And as I'm running this business, I'm like, oh, I didn't know about this and I didn't know about that. And so the more I was learning, it just created more confusion. So hiring a coach um, was key for me, but because she really played a role in two parts, not just helping to run the business,
Mhm.
but also with the mindset. It was when I hired my first coach when I really started having a whole different mindset, around money and, not even recognizing a lot of patterns from my past and my childhood were actually playing a role in who I was, to present day. And working with a coach really helped me to see that and break down a lot of those barriers so that I could be more successful in my business. So I learned then that business isn't all about business, right? Business
Mhm.
it's an inside game as
Yeah.
much as it is an outside game.
Yeah, it's so fun that you say it because my coaching world has been so many different. So like track and field, the athletic side of it, I just finished my 39th year and said I'm done with coaching track and field and being able to coach some Olympians and some national, collegiate champions and high school. I just had two high school champions the last couple of weeks that just they won state here. And think of those principles, because now I'm doing a lot more business coaching and spending time. And one of the things is, yeah, I've had some great coaches that, like you said, can see your blind spots, can see what you're not seeing because you know what you know, like you said. But
Mhm.
the other part of it is, I was telling some of my folks that I'm working with now, like, you got to come to practice. It's like, I need, it's going to be really hard to coach you right now if you're not gonna listen, you're not gonna do your thing, or because you're not really good at it. Like when we talk about podcasting, like I was just telling a gentleman right before you that I said he said he got to 20 podcasts and he's trying to get some more. I said, well, 90% of people who ever start a podcast never get to 10 because
Mhm.
they think that they have to be so good at it and everybody's going to watch it. And if nobody watches it, and I'm like, dude, you don't want nobody to watch it right now. You suck at this. Yeah. Let's just get some under our belt and then see it. Like you don't even know how to ask a question. All you know how to do is talk. And so I guess if you're doing a solo podcast, that's right. But you got a guest right there. You done took up the whole show talking. Things like that. And that development that everybody should go through. I think they say that if you don't if you should not coach anybody if you don't have a coach,
Mhm.
like
That's right.
you don't you need that's just part of our lives, mentors and coaches. And there's so many people, especially in our world, in our culture, that think we have to do everything by ourselves, figure out everything by ourselves, and then we're sitting on the curb at the bus stop with nobody to talk to because we're not willing to go talk to those people. So that's,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it's so cool that you said that. Thank you for
I
sharing.
just told a friend of mine, I was talking to a friend, and I don't remember what we were talking about. I mentioned something, and I said, "Yeah, and my coach something," and she goes, "Oh, you still have a coach?" And she's like, "Oh, I thought you hired a coach when you first started your business." I said, "Let me tell you something. I will never be without a coach. I will always have a coach." It may not be the same coach because as I evolve, right, a coach may only be able to take me so far. Then you get a new coach. Like,
Yeah, well,
always
and then the coach can't be the same coach for everything. I mean, like if I have a pastor for my spiritual coach, or I have somebody like that, or spiritual mentor, and then I have one for business, and then I have one for, maybe if I need one for, marriage or family or relationships. I mean, I've had mentors in
exactly.
all those areas of my life, and
Yes.
why
Yeah,
would I not want to have somebody that I
abs
can go talk to? I mean,
absolutely. Yep, that's
yeah,
right.
so that is, I think that's a lifelong journey where I don't know if we ever arrive, because I guess if you're not growing, you're dying, and it's hard to grow by yourself.
Yes.
And some of the
Yes.
mentors, not every coach has to be paid in a big, there's a lot. I guess that's the difference between coach and mentor, right? Mentor is doing it for free, and a coach is doing it, because you're paying them because you're trying to achieve a result. But so important
Yeah.
when we talk about family, you brought up your sister as a main, person in your life. Maybe
Mhm.
tell us what that family dynamic has been for you in your life and how important family has been, because we all know that there's some family that we want to be really close to, and then there's some family that we got to
Not
give them
so
some
much.
space, right?
Exactly, exactly. Family's very important to me. And I mean, I also learned that family is, not necessarily the people that you're just biologically attached to. But
I like
I
that.
actually lost my parents when I was very young.
Hmm.
And so my grandmother raised my sister and me. And
Okay.
my sister and I are actually 11 years apart. She's 11
Really?
years older than me. And so when we went to live with my grandmother, I was, little teeny baby and she was like 10.
Hmm.
And so, she was really she was like a mother figure to
Of
me.
course, yeah.
Um, and like I literally, I do not believe I would even be alive today had it not been for my sister. I'll tell you, funny story. I can laugh about it now. It's funny. It wasn't funny at the time. But when I was a baby, as it turns out, my mom, I guess, was look, remember you were saying, be careful, your family might see this. My mom was apparently having an affair with someone else's husband. And the woman came to the house to confront my mother. And she brought a weapon, she brought a gun.
Oh, wow.
And I guess in the course of their argument, she fired at my mother and she missed, and the bullet went through the wall. And
Okay.
I was in my crib on the other side of that wall.
Oh gosh.
And so fortunately I was okay. And my sister grabbed me and, she's, of course, I was a baby, so I'm telling this the way she told me the story. My sister grabbed me and, ran to my grandmother's house, who lived probably about 4 or 5 blocks away. And she was like, she's coming to stay with us. And from then
Mhm.
on, I was, living with my grandmother. And, my sister literally saved my life. And she's had an imprint on every major development in my life. So I owe her so much. Even when one of my major my life journey, one of my major changes was when I moved to Chicago. And when I got the job offer, I wasn't going to go.
Mhm.
Chicago's too far. It's too cold. I don't want to go there. And, my sister convinced me. She's like, "This is an opportunity. You should go." And so, yeah, I ended up moving to Chicago, and it was a huge turning point in my life. But she has just been. I mean, that's just my heart. That
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
like, there's not anything that I would not do, for my sister. So she's major, major influence in my life.
Okay. Um, yeah, as I think about family and dynamics and all the things that you have to do, and I want to talk a little bit just about health and the things that you do to keep yourself going. It's obvious that you're very active, that you are in a lot of places at a lot of times. And one of the things that I think happens as well in our community is health becomes one of those things that we don't pay attention to, or that we're scared to go to doctors, or we don't get our something happens, we gonna take care of everything ourselves, right?
Mhm.
How have you been able to stay healthy, and what are some of the things you do to have as much energy as you have to do the things that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, health is number one, right? It's like you can have
Mhm.
everything. You can have the best house, you can have the most money, you can do all this stuff, but if you don't have your health, and I know this partly because, as I mentioned, I was raised by my grandmother, and
Mhm.
when she was diagnosed with cancer, I moved back home to be with her and to help her and to see her in those last few months
Mhm.
to go from this, strong woman who, helped everybody. She was very vibrant. I mean, even in her 70s, she was volunteering, right? She was, going to the nursing homes and volunteering and helping the seniors and, going to the food pantries and the kitchens. And, she was very active in church. And to see her just deteriorate the way this disease really took her livelihood just underscored the importance of taking care of yourself, and so for me that means eating very healthy, right? I try to eat healthy as much as I can. I have those days where, yeah, I'll eat, sneak and have some cookies and ice cream, but for the most part I try to eat as clean as I can. I prioritize sleep. I will get at least 8 hours of sleep a night. That was not always the case because when I was,
Yeah.
working for the TV station, it was like, you're working all kinds of crazy schedules, going to work at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, midnight, 3 in the afternoon on this day. And so sleep is sometimes very hard to
Get
get.
get it when you can. Oh my
Get it
god.
when you can, right? And I sacrificed a lot of years where I worked overnight shifts. And I don't know if you've ever had to work like an overnight shift, but it takes a toll on your body. It really does. And that was also one of the deciding factors, when I decided to leave television news because I was like, my body can't keep this up. It was like, it's taking years off of my life, literally. And so, that was another one of the reasons why I walked away. But even now, I mean, I exercise. I work out 3 times a week with
Okay.
Olympic gold medalist Marion Jones.
I know Marion. Oh wow, that's fun. Okay.
Yes, Marion
Yes.
is amazing. I love her. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so
When she was in high school, I was coaching track in California,
really,
Buga Hills, and so many
wow.
meets that we got to talk. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Three
Yes,
times a week, Marion. I love it.
yeah.
Love it.
So Marion is responsible for these guns.
Ah, I love it. I love it. Oh
So
man.
yeah, I definitely do that, trying to drink as much water as possible. And that, and recently I've been also cutting out plastics because I've been reading and, just educating myself about the effects of plastic and how it's in everything. It's in our food, it's in our water, and the plastic utensils and the plastic storage containers and the water bottles and all of that. So trying to be mindful because I'm like, I only have one temple and I have to take good care of it as best I can. And so those are just some of the things that I do to make sure that, my body is healthy and strong. And then also my mind. I play brain games. Like I love Sudoku and I'll do crossword puzzles and, I do all of those things to keep my brain sharp. Um, I actually took care of a very close friend, one of my coworkers that I worked with at
Mhm.
ABC, and she developed dementia, and I ended up taking care of her for over 2 years. And, and during the course of doing that, I'm educating myself about the disease and how it works and what causes it and how can you prevent it and all of this stuff. And a big part of that was just exercising the brain. And
Mhm.
so I'm very mindful about that. So I make sure that I'm playing my brain games every single day. And I think another important part of that is that social connection.
So important.
It
Oh,
is so important. Yes.
oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I'm very intentional about that.
Gotcha. When you think of the future and what your life 5, 10 years, 3 years from now, what things do you want to accomplish? What are some things that you want to say, legacy type things that I know when we're like 29 years old. We don't think too much about legacy, but neither one of you are at 20. We're both 39 now. And
Right.
so, what are some of those things that you so look forward to?
Well, I will tell you, it's funny that you would ask. I'll be 59 in October.
Oh man. Well,
And
you
I
got
am
with
going
this
to have
journey.
my first grandchild in
Oh, nice. Okay.
yes. So, yeah, so that for me, so when you say legacy, it's like, wow, it's real for me now, right?
Hmm.
So I have three sons, and they're all adults, and so that legacy, of course, was very tied to them, right, and what I want for them. And it's always been like, obviously we've saved money for college, we've had investment properties and things like that, which we'll leave to them. But now that as I start to think about, oh my gosh, I'm going to have another generation on this planet, that legacy, I think, that I want that to look like, passing down a work ethic, that recognizing that the world is changing. We no longer live in a world where, okay, yeah, you go to school, you get a degree, you work at the same job for 30 years, you get a gold watch and you retire.
Hmm.
That's just not the journey anymore, right? And I think that, even with my own kids, all three of my sons, it was like I instilled that entrepreneurial spirit in them as well. And so, I hope to continue that with my grandchildren and hope to be able to build my business up to a level that hopefully one of them will want to take it over when I can no longer operate. But,
Yeah.
I really see Stay Ready Media being a global agency that just helps people to gain authority and credibility using any and all forms of media. And as we know, media is evolving. It's evolving so fast, and we're getting all of these, different vast outlets.
Mhm.
And so I want my company to be able to tie into all of that and to help people, particularly people who don't necessarily have that access or the financial means to, to grow their businesses in the traditional ways that they might want to.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, that you're going to be able to do that. I know you started talking about your boys, and you were you grew up without a mom. I mean, you had your sister and you had your grandma, but you didn't have a mom. Maybe just walk me through a little bit of what it meant to you to be a mom and the responsibility, because you're an accomplished businesswoman who's working these crazy hours and doing all this thing, but you still have the title of mom.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
did that mean, and how has that evolved over the years?
That was always something that was important to me. Even as a little kid, I would always, play with my dolls. So, and I know a lot of girls don't have that, but I would play with my best friend who lived next door, and
Mhm.
we would always, play with our baby dolls. So I always had this vision of someday being a mom. And so, having my three boys and my youngest, he was very ill when he was born. He was actually premature. He was born
Okay.
almost 2 months prematurely.
Gosh.
So he struggled the first few months of his life. He was born in December. He didn't even come home until February.
Okay.
And so he had a bit of a journey there. But um, seeing my boys and how close they are to each other, because I know a lot of siblings don't have that close relationship, but seeing how close they were and knowing how much they valued their mom. They always say, what do they say? Like boys love their moms, daddies love their girls. Well, we never had any girls. So I don't know about that.
You don't know. Yes.
But my boys take care of me, and I'm so, so, so blessed to have them. Um, so we're hoping for a girl for this grandchild because we
Are
need
you?
we need some girl energy around here.
There we go. I have several grandchildren, 16 of them, and almost all of them. Well, let's see. There's out of this 16, there's five boys, so 10 girls and five boys, or six, no,
Wow.
11 girls and five boys.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Woo.
So yeah, the girls are very. I have myself. I have five boys and three girls. So it kind of evened out and they're pretty close. But man, they are so fun
Yeah.
to be part of that journey and to be part of your life and what you get to do. And it just seems it changes when because now as a grandparent you give them back when they start acting up.
Exactly.
It is so cool. Or they run away and you just get to play, and you don't have to be the person that is the authority that has to make sure that they
That's right.
learn how to
The
do
fun
their
person.
the
Yes.
fun person that does all that. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Maybe when they're as we're winding down and we're getting out, I want to make sure that if there's some things that you would love to speak about or love to talk about that we haven't covered yet. I'm selfish in asking the questions that I want to know all the answers to, but I would love for you to maybe even walk us through, your business and why would somebody call you? Because I think there's so many people that are interested and wish, oh, if I could only know somebody, that could help me, show me the ropes or show me what to do. So maybe
Yes.
just kind of talk about whatever you wanted to that we didn't, and then maybe walk us through part of that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that I love that. So I think one of the reasons that people often hire me, and why anyone should hire me, is because as a PR and media strategist, I've worked on both sides of the fence. Most PR people are, they learn PR strategies and go to school for PR, and many of them have never stepped foot in a newsroom, so they don't really understand the landscape and the operations and what's really happening.
Mhm.
And so having that knowledge, it really gives me a whole different perspective because I know what producers want because I was that producer, right?
Mhm.
I know what a good pitch is because I had to
Here
mine
are thousands of yeah.
thousands of bad ones, right? To
Mhm.
hopefully find a good one in this pile somewhere.
Yes.
I know what makes a great interview. It would just break my heart when I would see people actually get an opportunity to be on a media platform. And then they walk away and they go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that. I didn't mean to say that. I meant to say this, or I was hoping they would ask me that. And so, having been in that situation and seen that happen so many times, now I actually get to help people on that journey
Okay.
because so many people don't even consider it because they think that it's not accessible. They're like, I could never do that. Like you said, I don't know anyone. And you don't have to know anyone. You just have to, like any element of business, you have to know what it is that they want. What is their problem and how do you help them solve their problem?
Mhm.
And so when you think about those producers and those editors, their problem is they're doing 50, 11 things in the course of a day.
Mhm.
And they need interesting, compelling stories that are going to benefit their audience. That's their problem. And that's a problem that they have each and every day that they walk into a newsroom. So your job now is to help them solve that problem, give them compelling news stories. Most people, when they're pitching media, they often pitch it as, oh, this is who I am and this is what I do. And they never think or are able to dig out the really important value that someone could actually use. And so, when we're training our clients, it's, we just get right to it. Like you asked me, why would someone hire you? I mean, it's the
Mhm.
same thing. Why would a producer invite you onto their show? Why would an editor want to write anything about you? It's not just what you do, but it's always a deeper, bigger picture. And most people don't know what that is for themselves. It's just like the saying, you can't read the label from inside the jar. And so
Yes.
you
Yeah.
we need a qualified professional, somebody who's been there, done that, and seen it to actually be able to recognize. And I can do this all the time. Like I'm a very sociable person and I meet people any and every way. I mean, I can talk to people in line at the grocery store, at the library, standing in line while waiting to vote and, having conversations with people. And oftentimes I'll hear something and I'm like, whoa, wait, say that again. Like,
Mhm.
that'd be a great media story. Um, and I was talking to this lady at an event one day, and she was telling me how she was going to be late for her martial arts class. And I was like, oh, great, you take martial arts. And she's an older woman, she has gray hair, and you could tell she was older. And she's like, yeah, I started taking martial arts when I was 50. And I'm like, who starts martial arts at 50?
Oh.
And she goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, I have two double black belts. And I'm like, what? Yeah, she
My
two
gosh.
third-degree black belts. And now I'm really leaning in.
Yeah, of course.
And then she says, yeah, she's like, well, I was an ER doctor. And then I switched careers to become a screenwriter. And now she is producing a documentary about women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are training for their black belts in martial arts.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you ever been on TV? And she's like, no. Why would anybody want to? What's interesting about that? And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Hello. Oh my gosh. Love
I'm
it.
like, that is a
Yeah.
great story. And I mean, it was so great. So she did actually end up working with me, and we ended up getting her tons and tons of media. But I have conversations like that with people all the time who are sitting on these, just golden media stories, and they don't even recognize it. And so I love when I come across stories like that. So she was one of my fun ones. I think it might have been like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago when she was on NBC. And they ended up doing like 4 segments with her because they were just so compelled
Fascinated.
by
Yeah.
her story. Yeah, she was amazing.
Oh my gosh. Are there any like 3 tips of how not to conduct yourself? I'd love to say are there 3 good tips, but I think people are like messing up on some things. If you think about my public persona, there's like 3 things you should never do, or 2 things, or 1 thing. Don't ever do this because it'll hurt you, or is it just there's
Um,
some things you should do?
let's see. I think in terms of what not to do is, when you're pitching someone, and you want to be on their show, don't make it all about you. That's the
Mm,
biggest mistake that most people make. They make it all about them. And it's like, no, the story's not about you. The story is for the audience. So
yeah.
always approach it from that perspective.
Okay.
The other thing is, you want to consider the timing. You don't want to call a newsroom when,
There's a
it's
hurricane outside right now.
exactly right. And I sometimes I will tell people, I'm like, literally, turn on the TV and see what's happening before you call a newsroom. Because if you're calling and they're doing wall to wall coverage about a hostage situation or
Yeah.
a hurricane that's coming, and you want to know why they're not answering your call, I'm like, you got to do your due diligence as
Yeah,
well.
there gotta be some common sense in there, right? That
There's
we know is
gotta
not that common, right?
Absolutely. And then the third thing I would say is don't stalk journalists online. Now that we have
Okay.
this tool called social media, and it's a wonderful tool, but we've had some stories where some people they take it a little bit too far. So social media is it's not for that. It's not for you to stalk the journalist.
No. Oh my gosh. And you think that would be common. I have, several, I've done little segments, whether it's in sports or, when I was doing homeless stuff. And, I have the reporters' cell phone numbers because that's like when they were there, they would tell you, like, why would I call them again? Like, if they call me back, then I'll know who's calling. But why would I? Yeah, but I can see people doing that. Like, oh, this is happening, come. And there's those nosy nanny people that would just want to tell you everything that's happening all day long, every day. They probably have to block numbers like that.
Exactly.
But oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah. But do your research. I mean, you once you've identified a show that you want to be on, I
Mhm.
always tell people watch the show. Watch the show. Like how can you pitch someone if you've never even seen the show? I would get that all the time, right? From people who would pitch me to be on my show. And I'm like, have you ever even seen the show?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, and
Oh,
I'll even get people, that want to work with me, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I want to be on the Sherry Shepherd show. I want to be," and I'm like, "Have you ever even seen it?" And they're like,
yeah,
"Well,
look,
no, but I just like her." like,
I-
I like her too, but that doesn't mean that you would qualify to be on her show.
the show's about cakes and you don't know how to cook. I mean, or
Exactly.
bake. I mean,
That's
oh
right.
gosh.
I'm like,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. How do people get a hold of you? Because this is such good information, and people should call you, and even just to get hey, how can you help me, or what should I be doing? That kind of stuff. How do we get to you?
absolutely. Yeah, just go to my website, stayreadymedia.com.
Okay.
So everything is there. I mean, you'll see some testimonials from some of my clients that I've worked with. There's also, you can get on my calendar and book a call. There's some videos that can kind of give you some idea of, what we do and how we do it. And if you're not familiar with PR or not sure that you're ready for PR, there's a couple of videos and things there that you can watch. And so, yeah, that's probably the quickest and easiest way. StayReadyMedia.com.
StayReadyMedia.com. Well, this has
Yeah,
been an honor. This has been fun. I can't wait to do another segment or whatever we want to call it, another podcast with you or another time where we just maybe just drill down on something that would be helpful for folks. Sometimes it doesn't all
absolutely.
have to be about our story. Sometimes we can actually give some really good advice for folks that then could then okay follow up on it and figure out how to do. So maybe we can do something like this. But I've had so
Absolutely.
much fun learning about you and things I didn't know about you, and that A turning into a C, and I can imagine what your face looked like when that showed up. That was so good, and just your whole journey, and I thank you for the person that you are, and your willingness to not be that place where most people can't afford to even show up at the doorstep to figure out how they can be seen and heard. And so you have a special knack and a need for that. Give us just one final thought as we close out the show today.
My final thought is, you're worthy. You have something of value. You're doing great work in the world, and the world needs to know your name. So let's get out there and, you need to become a household name. No matter where you are, there is an outlet that needs you. There's a producer who's looking for you, because if people can't find you, then they can't work with you. And then that means that you can't transform their lives. So it's a big circle. So let's
Yeah.
close that gap in the circle and get you known.
Oh, I love it, love it. Well, thank you again for being on the show. For those of you just watching this the first time, go ahead, subscribe, notifications. We have some amazing shows with some amazing guests. I want you to don't forget that you're God's greatest gift. He loves you if you allow him to. However, you are born for greatness. Stacey just alluded to that. There is something great inside of you that needs to jump out onto somebody else and jump out into the world because you need to be heard. You are an answer to somebody else's prayer too. And without you jumping out and being available, that prayer can't be answered. And so you don't get to decide how that prayer is answered. You just get to be available to make that happen. So you guys have an amazing, awesome, just incredible night tonight, day tonight, afternoon, whatever it is for you today. And we'll look forward to talking to you on the next one. We'll see you again.